I love IGA. No, I'm not talking about the convenience store chain, although I do love going to my local IGA from Maxibon and Chokioke at 2 in the morning, but I love the games that Koji Igarashi has directed even more. The Metroidvania Castlevania games are sublime, even the ones that aren't canon. The awesome gameplay coupled with beautiful visuals and godly soundtracks ensure that they'll always have a spot in my cold dead heart. But prior to these games, there were some old-ass Castlevania games that were also pretty good, but haven't aged quite as well as some of the later releases. I mean, do you remember Castlevania coming out? Because I sure as heck don't, I wasn't even alive. And now, the 2015 Kickstarter for Koji Igarashi's spiritual successor to the Castlevania series, Bloodstained, Ritual of the Night, that raised over $5.5 million after its initial goal of $500,000, is starting to pay its dividends, with the release of the Kickstarted stretch goal, Bloodstained, Curse of the Moon. Bloodstained Curse of the Moon is a retro-inspired minigame of sorts released across multiple platforms, and if you didn't know any better, you'd probably think that this game was from the 80s. Arguably the most exciting part about this release is the precedent that it sets up for the upcoming release of IGA's main course, Bloodstained Ritual of the Night. But despite the fact that this game is more or less an extra release to whet our Castlevanian appetites, on its own, it's a really well made title that truly is a fun little challenge. In classic Bloodstained fashion, you set out to fight the creatures of the night and battle your way through a demonic castle all the way to the keep for the big showdown. You initially start as Zangetsu, a demon hunter from a faraway land, and will unlock new companions as you progress and slay bosses. Miriam, the besterest girl, Alfred, some old dude with a couple of useful spells, and Jeeble, the man that definitely is an Alucard. Each character has their own weapon and their own available sub-weapons, apart from Jeeble, who is just a bat boy. And they will each have their own maneuver abilities and such. For example, Miriam can jump higher and slide, and Jeeble can, as mentioned, turn into a bat boy. The game spans 8 levels and a secret true ending level that is unlocked after getting the neutral ending on your first playthrough. It also has a bad ending if you just want to kill everyone like a real scumbag. A really big aspect of this game's identity is replayability. You're encouraged to play through multiple times to get the multiple endings between the standard and nightmare modes. And there's also the Curse of the Moon mechanic, which allows you to head to earlier stages in the game and access areas that weren't previously accessible. The game controls so much like a classic Castlevania game too, the way you can't change direction mid-air after jumping and those horrid pitfalls are an instant death if you get knocked into them. It's challenging and retro in just the ways you'd expect. It does however have the same couple of setbacks as well, with the somewhat slow movement and the somewhat inconvenient manner in how you have to move diagonally to navigate staircases and such. However, the game does implement a few modern touches, with a proper multi-slot save system, more checkpoints, and a less unforgiving continue and death system that makes the challenge quite a bit less frustrating, but frustrating at times nonetheless. Each character also has their own health bar, unlike in Castlevania 3, which encourages the use of all 4 characters even further, as you often can't just use one character to take all of the demonic beatings. Keeping characters alive is very important, as if they die you won't be able to use them again unless you lose all of your characters or beat the stage, which can add that little bit of extra pressure or loss of an ability in a pinch. One area that certainly sways away from the original games and more into the Mega Man scene is the complexity of the boss fights. They're definitely some of the best parts of the game, with movesets and patterns that vary slightly between normal and nightmare mode as well. This game has a lot more to it than you'd think at a first glance. The replayability and evolving gameplay as you unlock new characters and abilities really make this game fulfilling and worthwhile, despite its somewhat short length. Overall, the gameplay is a whole lot of fun, and while difficult at times and even more frustrating at others, it is a masterful recreation of what made the original Castlevania game so successful back in the 80s and 90s. If you want to play an old school Castlevania game, play Curse of the Moon, because you basically are just playing an old school Castlevania game, let's be honest. This game looks and feels ridiculously similar to the original Castlevania games, most notably Castlevania 3, the one it's more obviously trying to replicate. It's almost too similar. But unlike what IGN thoughtlessly shouted multiple times in their review, it's not enough for a lawsuit, okay? You can't own a genre, especially not Konami. But they also said that Alfred's name was
Arthur, a frail wizard.
Because how to do a simple fact check? So look, I think it's fair to say that they don't always know what they're talking about. But it also shows that IGA knows what he is doing. And it means that, hopefully, he's aiming to create as faithful a recreation of the Metroidvania genre with Ritual of the Night than he did with this game. If IGA is able to capture the same magic of the Metroidvania games in Ritual of the Night, it is going to be a phenomenal release. But I do hope that it does still add a bit of new flavour, something that really makes the game stand out on its own. After all, it is a totally new series despite being a spiritual successor, but after everything Konami has done to him and others, I think it's only fair and necessary that IGA distances himself a little bit from those scumbags. Nobody likes the Metroidvania games, am I right? Aesthetically, this game legitimately took me into the DeLorean and told me, Marty, we're going back to the goddamn 80s. The visuals on this game are done in a retro style that is classic, albeit fresh. It looks fantastic, and it fits the style that it's going for perfectly. In typical IGA directed fashion, the stage environments and parallaxing backgrounds are designed sublimely. The way that the character and enemy sprites stand out from the background with more pronounced colours and outlines is not only faithful to the era, but just purely good visual design. And the soundtrack. Oh my sweet dear Jesus goddamn fucking Christ, the soundtrack. If there was one thing that IGA needed to really nail in these Bloodstained games, it was the music, because the original Castlevania games had hands down the best music in any video game. And that's not only an opinion, but a goddamn fact. Honestly, if the gameplay alone didn't make you think you were playing a Castlevania game, if you just shut your eyes and listen to the music, you'd definitely be convinced you were. The soundtrack alone is just about worth the $10 that you pay for this game. It's fantastic. Also, did I mention that this game is only $10? If you haven't bought it yet, why the heck not? After playing Curse of the Moon, I am super duper whooper excited for whatever our humble overlord IGA has planned for us in the hopefully not too distant future. Playing Curse of the Moon was an absolute joy and a nostalgia trip, even though I'm just one of those filthy half 90s half millennial kids that wasn't cool enough to be born at a time when games were still retro as heck. But I don't care, I still feel like a sad 90s kid, okay? If Ritual of the Night is just as faithful to the classic Metroidvania games while being brave enough to add its own flavour and style, it will hands down be my pick for the best game of 2018. But that's if it actually comes out this year, because who knows when this game is actually going to come out. It was meant to be 2017, but that certainly didn't happen. Which ultimately is a good thing. They're not rushing things and they hit a much higher Kickstarter target than they were expecting, so I'm really excited for the end result. And Koji, look, after all these years I feel confident enough to put my full faith in you to deliver, but we've seen the kind of stuff that Kickstarter has thrown us over the past couple of years. And dear God, if you give us another Mighty Number 9, I'm gonna give you Mighty Number 9 seconds to evacuate the planet, okay? Okay. Also put Whooper in, okay, thanks, bye.